Exception handling introduction. Exception handling. Exception is an indication of problem during execution. Exception occurs infrequently. Example, divided by 0. Promotes robust and fault tolerant software. Java's exception handling nearly identical to the C++ language. Exception handling overview. Mixing program code with error handling code that makes program difficult to read, modify, maintain as well as debug. Use of exception handling. Process exceptions from program components. Handle exception in a uniform manner in large projects. Remove error handling code from main line of execution. A method detects an error and throws an exception. Exception handler processes the error. Uncaught exceptions yield adverse effects. That is, it might terminate program execution. Code that could generate errors put in try blocks. Code for error handling enclosed in a catch clause. The finally clause always executes. Termination model of exception handling. The block in which the exception occurs expires immediately. Throws clause specifies exception method throws or by methods it calls. Simple problems that can easily be fixed can be handled as errors. Use exception handling for more complicated situations. Typical exceptions: array index out of range, overflow, division by 0, invalid method parameters, memory allocation problems. These are all the typical exceptions. Most significant use of exception handling. Problem occurs in a method, but resolution must be done in calling method, that is one or more levels of above. Method that detects problem throws an exception. Method that resolves problem that catches the exception. Exception handling examples: divided by 0. It is a common programming mistake. Throws arithmetic exception. Number format exception is thrown if parts double or that are given bad strings. Program catches an exception in an appropriate catch block, that is same class or super class. Program continues executing with code after the last catch block, that is not back inside the try block. This is the example of a divided by 0 test.java, an exception handling example that checks for divided by 0. So the totally we are using 3 packages over here: java.awt, java.awt.even and then javax.swing. 3 packages used here. In public class divided by 0 test extend jframe. So that is we are using the interface concepts extends. Implements inheritance concepts here. Public class divided by 0 test extends jframe. Here we are using the inheritance concepts, so which implements acts as listener. Private j text field, input field 1, input field 2 and output field. In private, integer number 1, number 2 result. Setup graphical user interface. In public, divided by 0 test. In super function, key which is demonstrating the exceptions, get content pan and set its layout. Container is equal to get container pan. So container set dot layout, new grid layout of 3,2. Setup label and input field 1, container dot add, new j label, enter numerator, swing constants, right. Input field 1 is equal to new text field, container dot add is equal to new of field 1. Setup label, input field 2, register listener, container dot add, new label, enter demonstration and press enter, swing constants, right. Input field 2 is equal to new j text field, container dot add input field 2, input field 2 dot add action listener this, setup label and output field, container dot add new label result dot swing constants, right. Output field is equal to new text field, container dot add output field, set sizes of 425, 100, set visible true, end divided by 0, test constructor, process GUI events, public void action performed. We are using the try block here. Number 1 is equal to integer dot parse int, and number 2 is equal to integer dot parse int, input field dot text field. So read the integers from the text field. So this is the enter number. If we are entering the number 100, the denomination presenter 7, so result is 1.4. so like that we have to given the two integers over here. So this is the outline is the divided by 0 test.java, and Java exception hierarchy exceptions like everything in a Java or objects, superclass, throwable, subclass exception, exceptional situations should be caught by program, subclass error typically not caught by the program. Checked exceptions include any you create, catch or declare requirement. Unchecked exceptions, subclass of runtime exceptions, example number format exception. It is a good idea to catch but not required. Inheritance hierarchy for a class throwable, exceptions and error. In exception there are two categories, runtime exception and IO exception. Error is a AWT error, thread death, out of memory error. Rethrowing an exception, rethrow exception if catch that cannot handle it. This typically involves a try block with its catch blocks inside another try block. Inner catch block, it throws it to the outer catch block or even on the calling method. Finally, cause resource leak. It is caused when resources are not released by a program, files, databases, connections, network connections. The finally block is optional. It appears after catch blocks, always executes whether or not any exception is thrown. It used to release resources. Examples, close files. So this is the examples of the closing files in Java. Rethrow, this is the rethrowing an exception, and this is the finally blocks executes even through exception thrown. Lines 38 and 80. And we are giving the finally block here. The finally block always executes here. Stack unwinding, exception not caught in scope. If method determines stack unwinding occurs, all local variables go out of scope control, it reverts to the statement that called method. Another attempt to catch exception if there is inside a try block and on not on. This is the using exceptions in Java. A call method, it throws the exception. Catch exception from method throws execution. Method declares a throws cause, throws the exception. Totally we are using the this kind of exception, throws exception. Exception from method throws exception. Throws an exception using here. And also here exception handled in method throws exception. Finally block, finally is always executed. Print stack trace, get stack trace and get message. Throwable class method print stack trace. It prints a method called stack. It helpful in debugging. Method get stack trace. It updates stack trace information. Method get message. It returns descriptive string. Uncaught exception, default exception handler. It displays complete trace, stack trace. So we are using the call method here. In call method one we are using, as well as in catch method it prints information generated and get message and print stack trace. Finally print stack trace elements over here. In stack trace elements we are using the current elements get line and current element get method name. And in call method 2 also declares a through cast. In call method 3 that declares a through cast, and the throw an exception that propagates the block to the main. This is the output of the simple program.